Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into how one of modern metal's most, unique bands managed to completely rewire the sound of the mainstream, all while becoming a powerful voice for a struggle that's over a century old.
So let's just start with this question, right? How in the world does a band sell over 40 million records? I mean, that's a huge number for any artist. But for System of a Down, it's pretty much unbelievable when you really stop and listen to their sound.
Because let's be real, this was not radio-friendly pop. Their music was this brilliant, chaotic storm of thrash metal, soaring operatic vocals, and Armenian folk music. It was complicated, it was aggressive, and for a lot of people, hearing it for the first time was a totally alien experience.
And that right there, that's the real core of their story. This was never just about the music. From day one, all that fame was a tool. It was a platform they were building for a very specific, very personal mission. They literally turned their art into a form of activism.
You know, to really get what System of a Down is all about, you have to look past the gold records, past the sold-out arenas. You have to understand that their main goal wasn't just to make music. It was to force the entire world to pay attention to a massive historical injustice.
Everything about them comes from their shared heritage. I mean, this isn't just a group of guys who started jamming together. They are 4 Armenian Americans, and all of them are grandsons of survivors of the 1915 Armenian Genocide. So every single riff, every lyric, it's all filtered through this shared history, this shared trauma. That mission, getting the genocide recognized, has been the engine driving this band for decades. Okay, so they have this incredibly powerful mission, but how did they create a sound that was so different, so unique that it could actually carry that heavy message to millions of people? Let's take a look at the architecture of this wild avant-garde metal machine. So the roots of the band actually go back to an early project called Soil. That's where the creative core of Serj Tankian and Daron Malakian really started. After Soil broke up, they regrouped with Shavo Odejajian on bass, who came up with the name System of a Down, and eventually landed on that classic powerhouse lineup with John Dolnayan on drums.
All right, now we're getting to the secret sauce, the Phrygian Dominant scale. This is not your typical scale you'd hear in Western rock music. It has these really unique intervals that create that tense, almost urgent, and very distinctly Middle Eastern or Armenian feel. It's the reason their guitar riffs are so instantly recognizable.
And they didn't just stop there. They took those scales and mixed them with these crazy rhythms that don't follow the normal 4/4 timing of rock. It gives the music this lurching, chaotic feel. Then, they tune their guitars way, way down for that super heavy, crushing foundation. And on top of all of that, you have the incredible vocals. Serj going from opera to a growl in a split second, with Daron's harmonies locking it all together. So, this completely unique sound catapulted them to the very top of the music world. But, and this is a huge but, it happened at the exact same moment the world was being turned completely upside down. This is where their biggest success collided head-on with a massive national crisis. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's almost impossible to believe. In the span of 1 week, they go from releasing a #1 album, the absolute peak of their career, to suddenly having their hit single banned from the radio because of a national tragedy. The whiplash must have been insane. So yeah, it was this specific line from Chop Suey that was seen as way too sensitive for the radio right after the 9/11 attacks. It landed them on that infamous Clear Channel list of songs that were lyrically questionable. But here's the incredible twist. The radio ban didn't kill the song. In fact, it might have made it bigger. MTV put it on constant rotation and it just exploded, turning the band into global superstars. After that, the band's fame just kept climbing. They were undeniably one of the biggest rock acts on the entire planet. But all of that intense pressure, all that success built on this heavy political and creative foundation, well, it started to create some serious cracks inside the band. And by 2005, they did something that hadn't been done since the Beatles. Think about that for a second. The Beatles. They released 2 completely different studio albums, Mesmerize and Hypnotize, and both of them debuted at #1 on the charts in the same year. From the outside, they were on top of the world. But behind the curtain, things were really falling apart. It mostly boiled down to a creative and financial conflict between Serj and Daron. Serj wanted a more equal partnership in the songwriting process, but felt like Daron had taken almost complete control. They just couldn't see eye to eye anymore, and so in 2006, one of the biggest bands in the world just stopped. They went on hiatus, and during that break, you could really see just how different their creative instincts had become. Serj went off and explored orchestral music and jazz. Daron and John kept things going with a more direct, punk rock and metal vibe, and Shavo even dabbled in experimental hip-hop. It really highlighted how much they had grown apart musically.
Now, the band did get back together to tour in 2011, which was great for fans, but for almost a decade, no new music. That creative divide was still there. But then, in 2020, something happened. Something that was bigger than any artistic difference. A crisis in their homeland called them back to their original mission.
When war broke out in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, an area that's absolutely central to their Armenian heritage, the band knew they couldn't stay silent. So they immediately put all their disagreements aside, got in a studio, and recorded their first new songs in 15 years. This wasn't for an album, it wasn't for a label, it was purely to raise money and awareness for the people affected by the war.
And the result? It was immediate, and it was incredible. Those two songs, Protect the Land and Genocidal Humanoids, raised over $600,000 for the Armenia Fund. It was just definitive proof that even after all that time, their platform was still an unbelievably powerful tool. The mission was still alive and kicking.
So, when you look back at everything, what's the real legacy of System of a Down? It's not just the record sales or the crazy sound, it's their impact as a true cultural force. At the end of the day, this is what makes them so remarkable and so rare. They became one of the biggest bands on the planet without ever softening that wild and frightening sound, and without ever for 1 second backing down from the political mission that started it all. They took their message from tiny clubs in LA to the biggest stages on Earth. Which really leaves us with one last question. Can a song, a crazy 3-minute blast of metal, actually work as a political weapon? Well, for 4 grandsons of genocide survivors who sold 40 million albums and used their voice to demand historical justice, the answer seems to be a loud, undeniable yes.